Hello, my name is Simon Foster and I'm the co-chair along with Dr. Phil McCurdie of the New South Wales Pearcey Committee. It's my privilege to be the first to welcome you here this afternoon. The Pearcey Foundation acknowledges the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the Boon Wurrung and Waiwurrung Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and all of the traditional custodians who belong to the lands where the Pearcey Foundation and you, our guests, are based. We acknowledge all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders with us today and their elders, past, present and emerging, whose stories, traditions and living cultures in this country are a valuable resource, as are those of all who have come to make Australia their home. Together, we are Australia. 2020 has marked many unusual firsts, and this event is one of them, as our 22nd New South Wales Pearcey Entrepreneur of the Year Awards will be our first fully virtual event. Unfortunately, the Minister for Women, and incidentally Foreign Affairs, Senator Marise Payne, has had to give her apologies for this evening, but we have a packed schedule with some amazing finalists for the Entrepreneur of the Year, Professor Mary O'Kane, along with a panel of some of our most accomplished past winners and Hall of Famers. It's now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Wayne Fitzsimmons, the Chair of the Pearcey Foundation. Wayne.
Right, thank you very much, Simon. And as Chair, it's my honour and delight to welcome you all to the 2020 New South Wales Pearcey Entrepreneur Award. I'd like to make special welcome to Anthony Woodward, he's of the New South Wales Pearcey Committee, who along with the chairs, Simon and Phil, have been instrumental in helping us put together this afternoon's proceedings. I also want to thank all the innovators and entrepreneurs who join us today for your courage and vision, the investors who are prepared to take a risk, the researchers, lawyers and others who are helping us to weave our way into the new and uncertain economy without holding us back. I want to welcome and encourage policymakers to embrace progress and think well ahead. I'm glad the Senate and the government saw it sound to introduce some good incentives in the R&D tax breaks. And I want to welcome and encourage policymakers to embrace progress and to think well ahead. And I want to welcome anyone whose name or discipline I haven't mentioned. Last of all, I want to acknowledge and celebrate the extraordinary work and legacy of our computing pioneer, Dr. Trevor Pearcey, whom this organisation is named in memory of. We will soon find out who's been awarded the 2020 New South Wales Award from a truly outstanding foursome of finalists, as well as having the pleasure of hearing from Professor Mary O'Kane. Mary was the Pearcey medalist in 2014, and some of you may recall for her work in co-chairing the New South Wales bushfires inquiry. I'm also excited to hear from some of our past New South Wales Pearcey Award winners and the Hall of Famers with some of their learnings and perspectives from their own entrepreneurial journeys. What an afternoon. Continuing on from the wonderful stories we've just heard today at our National Pearcey Women's event as part of Ada Lovelace Day. Some over near 90 participants to listen to about 14, 15 female pioneers in our business. The launch of a much bigger Pearcey initiative to acknowledge the wonderful contributions of women to our Australian computing industry. Now I'd like to hand over to Anthony Woodward to introduce our 2020 New South Wales Pearcey Entrepreneur of the Year finalists. Anthony is CEO, Executive Director, Mentor, Advisor and Technology Entrepreneur with over 2 decades of experience building startup enterprises into industry leaders, and has been involved with the Pearcey Foundation in New South Wales since entering our Hall of Fame in 2009. Anthony is the chair of the judging panel for this year's award. Over to you, Anthony.
Thank you, Wayne, and thanks to you and to everyone online this afternoon for joining us for this special event and for your support of the Pearcey Foundation, which was started 22 years ago to celebrate, support and encourage Australians to engage in and excel at the invention, development and use of information, communication and computing technologies for the betterment of our society. Inspired by Dr. Trevor Pearcey, a global pioneer of the digital computer era, the foundation focuses on the people and dialogue that drive the ICT sector to stay at the leading edge. Trevor led the design and construction of the first digital computer in Australia, Wright, making Australia the third country in the world to create such a computer. The Pearcey Awards recognise those who continue to put Australia at the forefront of technology development and application. Peer selection is the hallmark of the Pearcey Awards to recognise those individuals who have made a significant contribution to the development and growth of the ICT sector in Australia. Each year, the Foundation awards the Pearcey Medal for Lifetime Achievement. The medalist and up to 2 others are included in the Pearcey Hall of Fame to recognise their very significant lifetime contributions to Australian ICT. Those awards, together with the National Pearcey Entrepreneur Award, will be made later this year in Sydney. Today we celebrate the 22nd New South Wales Pearcey Entrepreneur Award, which recognises an individual or team who has taken a risk, made a difference, and is an inspiration to the Australian ICT community. Judged by a committee of last award recipients, this is the community recognising the significant achievements of its peers who are in the midst of their career and are leading the Australian ICT sector on the global stage from the front. This year, the Pearcey Foundation is thrilled to have 4 truly inspirational and outstanding finalists who will forever be part of the New South Wales Pearcey Honour List as 2020 New South Wales Pearcey Hall of Famers. And we're about to see a slide with these finalists on them. The finalists are as follows. Jamila Gordon, and these finalists should be on our conference shortly. One of Australia's most respected IT and digital leaders, Jamila has a deep understanding of the corporate world from both the technology and business perspective. Having held leadership roles in businesses in Australia and globally, she has an extensive network spanning the business, technology, startup and venture capital worlds. Jamila's background includes roles as a Group Chief Information Officer at Qantas Airways and Leighton Holdings CIMIC. Prior to this, as a global executive with IBM based in Europe, she led some of IBM's largest transformational mega deals with Selectron Manufacturing. Jamila has also worked with AXA Insurance and ABN AMRO Bank. Jamila founded Lumachain in 2018 and quickly partnered with Microsoft, having taken part in the tech giant's first scale-up program. Within 18 months, she'd completed a funding round of $3.5 million to develop the business, led by Main Sequence Ventures, the manager of Cyro's Innovation Fund. Lumachain brings transparency to global supply chains, benefiting producers, enterprises, and consumers. The platform tracks and traces the origin, location, and condition of individual items in a supply chain in real time, from farm to fork. This incentivizes farmers and manufacturers to create high quality, ethically produced products and allows enterprises to reduce waste, increase efficiency, and grow revenues and margins. It allows consumers to know with absolute certainty the provenance, condition, and quality of what they buy, and that it has been ethically and sustainably sourced. Please welcome Jamila. Anna Wright is the CEO and co-founder of BindiMaps, a navigation app revolutionising the way we navigate indoor spaces. Launched in January 2017, BindiMaps is an award-winning smart cities technology startup, bringing accessibility to people and places currently out of bounds for people who are vision impaired. By providing a navigation tool that works where traditional GPS doesn't, inside major public precincts such as university campuses, airports, shopping malls, and office buildings, BindiMaps offers increased convenience for most, while fundamentally changing the lives of people with vision impairment, allowing them to navigate public spaces independently and safely. Anna developed the idea for BindiMaps after undergoing years of major surgery to save her own eyesight, a daunting experience that led her to ask the question, how can we make the world more accessible for people with vision impairment? BindiMaps, originally Banjo Maps, was co-founded by Anna with her business partner, Mladen Jovanovic, partly as a result of a condition diagnosed in Anna's own eyesight, with the original prognosis that in time she would become blind. Anna has also been listed as one of the top 10 Australian entrepreneurs to watch in 2019, top 5 female Australian entrepreneurs 2019, and top 10 dynamic Australian entrepreneurs for 2020. Please welcome Anna Wright. Carolyn Me has previously been recognised by AFR Westpac 100 Women of Influence and the ACS Digital Disruptor Awards. She regularly speaks in media and events and is an example of a woman pursuing a deep tech solution at the intersection of health tech and mobile apps. Sound Scouts is a mobile app-based hearing test to screen children for hearing deficiency. It was initially developed in 2011 with a $45,000 seed grant from the New South Wales Government. Carolyn continued to work on the app, eventually receiving a $1.1 million medical devices grant in 2015. In late 2018, the Commonwealth Department of Health contracted $4 million to provide Sound Scouts to every child in Australia. Sound Scouts is focused on the delivery of accessible, fun and affordable hearing screening, particularly for children. The flagship product is a mobile game created to check children's hearing before they start school. Developed in collaboration with the National Acoustic Laboratories, the research arm of Australian Hearing, the game incorporates advanced scientific principles that enable it to detect a range of hearing problems. Please welcome Carolyn Me. And finally, but not least, Joshua Ross and Adam McCurdie. While away following their uni graduations and about to commence on their their careers in IT and hedge funds, respectively, Josh and Adam agreed they were not really going into jobs they wanted to ultimately fulfill, and committed to each other that when a great idea came up, they would support each other and work together to achieve it, removing loneliness as one of the key barriers to starting up. 6 years later, with a driver of sending corporate profits to charitable causes, they started Humanitix as the online ticketing space was ripe for disruption and did not have a good name with venues, performers or audiences. Humanitix is the first of its kind not-for-profit ticketing platform that redirects 100% of booking profits to education projects for disadvantaged children. To date, Humanitix has donated over $500,000 to its charity partners. Josh and Adam sacrificed lucrative corporate jobs to build Humanitix, self-funding and volunteering the first 18 months of operations. With their commercial expertise and passion to enact positive social change, they came up with the ambitious goal of disrupting the massive event ticketing industry and shifting billions of dollars towards social impact. And we're joined today by Joshua Ross. Adam McCurdie is away and couldn't join us. A huge congratulations to all of the finalists, and I can assure you it was a very difficult judging process. Obviously, we took those votes out to the Hall of Famers from previous award years, and we do have a result for you. To announce the winner of the 2020 award and to say a few words of her own, I would like to now welcome Professor Mary O'Kane AC. Professor O'Kane is a former University Vice Chancellor, a member or chair of many government and private sector boards and committees, an active consultant and public speaker, chief scientist and engineer for the state of New South Wales from 2008 to 2018, and current chair of the New South Wales Independent Planning Commission. Professor O'Kane has an extraordinary breadth of depth of experience in innovation, research, higher education, energy, ICT, public policy and development spheres. She also has extensive national and international networks reflecting this expertise. In 2014, Professor O'Kane was also awarded the Pearcey Medal and the inaugural Ada Lovelace Medal. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Mary O'Kane.
Thanks, Anthony. And I'm very honoured to be asked to speak at the Pearcey New South Wales Entrepreneur Awards. In speaking, I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're all on, and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and to send my greetings from Gadigal land. I also want to wish you a happy Ada Lovelace Day. Ada Lovelace Day happens on the second Tuesday of October, and today's the day. And this is one of the reasons we're holding all these events on today. As most of you know, the Pearcey Foundation honours the pioneers of Australian ICT, not least Trevor Pearcey, who, as we've heard, built the first Australian computer, one of the earliest computers in the world. Now, I'm quite old. No, you don't all need to say, but you don't really look it. Because I'm of a certain age, while I was not present at the very earliest development in Australian computing, I did happen to get to know pretty much all of the pioneers. And I first met Trevor Pearcey in about 1982, when he visited my then boss in the School of Information Sciences at the Canberra College of Advanced Education, Don Overhoy. Don had been one of the pioneers in Australian defence computing, and with Trevor had been one of the figures in founding organisations like the Australian Computer Society. Anyway, I was invited around to Don's office to meet the great man, and walked in to see a bloke who looked something like a tramp in a baggy approximation to a safari suit, with perfect COVID dressing, only 40 odd years too soon. Though I was a jeans and t-shirt girl myself in those days, I was a bit shocked because in the early 1980s in Canberra, men tended to wear suits, and computing people did tend to be a bit nerdy, but they were neat in appearance, and Trevor was not. But I was fascinated when I sat listening to Trevor and Don talk and discuss the early days of computing as they reminisced, and I thought I learnt a lot about the history of the still emerging field. And I was absolutely charmed by Trevor's interest in my research in automatic speech recognition. I had done my PhD in that field, automatic speech recognition, pretty much the first, well, very much the first in Australia, in the late 1970s and early 80s. And I'd actually met Don Overhoy at that time, through another pioneer in Australian ICT, Professor Stephen Caniff, who headed the Department of Engineering Physics at the Research School of Physical Sciences at the ANU. And Steve supervised my PhD, and how it came about that I was doing it and how I got into computer science at all, because there were very limited numbers of computing degrees in those years. And I had started one at UQ, only to give it up in the Easter of the first year because it interfered with going to the beach on Fridays. But when I was interested in sound and speech. And Steve Caniff, who headed the control systems part of the Home Apollo generator lab at the ANU, which was like a gigantic capacitor switch that would turn on and run the synchrotron, he realised that classic control theory was not good enough on controlling the Home Apollo generator after there'd been a series of very tragic accidents, including a fatality, and decided the answer was to get into artificial intelligence instead of classic control, or to at least put the two of them together. And he decided that the way to get into artificial intelligence was to put on PhD students. Neither he nor the students knew anything about the field, didn't worry anyone particularly, and Steve put on one student in picture processing, Sworn, famous in GIS processing these days, one student in speech recognition, that was me, and various students in other fields, probably the most famous being Graham Hurst in natural language understanding, who's still known for the studies of anaphora. And we either sank or we swam, and we basically supervised our own PhDs. It was a wonderful way to learn about research. It was a wonderful way to learn about research in ICT. In my case, I was enabled to go to many conferences, to work across many fields that were related to speech linguistics, psycholinguistics, and so on. And I won a scholarship to go to Italy and spent quite some time there with one of the earliest speech recognition groups in Europe. It was, it's really a great time. And I came back home and I realised I was working in computer science. and had a series of roles in computer science faculties in Sydney and Canberra, and did a lot of consulting in the field. I won major grants. I set up a quite extensive speech recognition research and trained quite a few people myself in various ways, and was lucky enough to have a series of promotions through academic life over a range of years. It was a fantastic time in Australian computing. We saw enormous numbers of students go through computing schools. I found that people were supportive and friendly, and above all, they were fascinating. They were eccentrics like Trevor and Don and Steve, but many of them were just normal people on the surface, but deeply innovative, lateral thinking, willing to have a go, very keen to support our emerging field, very community-minded in that professional sense, and also making their mark internationally, because Australian computing took on some particular flavours, particularly reflecting the fact that we're a big country, very sparsely populated. So we became particularly good in things that are needed in a country like that: telecommunications, sensing, and how you run a country that is so dispersed. And some of the great productivity gains in Australia of the 1990s really come out of ICT. It was a fantastic time, the 80s and into the early 90s. I learned a lot. I met wonderful people. But there was one thing we didn't do super well, and that was to attract large numbers of women into the profession. And we didn't, the few we didn't particularly highlight their contribution. I found this puzzling, since computing is a modern field where one can make a difference, and women tend to want to make a difference. And while we weren't hopeless, it wasn't great. I mean, some things we did really well. One of those was because we desperately needed more students in computing. We offered a lot of education through a graduate diploma mechanism where you did your first degree in anything you liked, theology, physics, sociology, and then came and did a graduate diploma at one of the big schools of computing. And that was particularly attractive to women, so that we got the numbers of women up through that a little way, but still not as high as we would have liked. There were always, and I need to emphasise this, there were always people who did celebrate the contribution of women. And my very first boss, my boss ahead of Don Overhoy, was John Debenham at what is now UTS, famous for introducing logic programming to Australia. And John was the first person I ever heard talk about Ada Lovelace. And John talked about Ada Lovelace all the time. And I don't think it was because she was a woman, it was because he really admired her work. We also had some wonderful and have wonderful women in the field. This afternoon, Professor Jenny Seabury, one of Australia's leaders in cryptography, was talking in the event Pearcey held earlier. We have great people like Lindsay Catamole in business and so many others in business, Professor Sveta Venkatesh in artificial intelligence at Deakin, many, many others. And we are good at taking away the fear of certain topics like maths by teaching particularly good maths in the sense that you don't need a background in maths to do it, in discrete maths that is particularly designed for computing, even though we won't go into the theory within pure maths that it derives from. And we are slightly better than our sister fields of maths, electrical engineering and so on, but it's still challenging to get enough women into the field. And it's not just here in Australia that that's a problem. It's a worldwide phenomenon. With only about 21% of all PhDs in computer science being in the field, being female. And of course, the Turing Award, the computing equivalent of the Nobel, has, since it was started in 1966, has only had 3 women winners. And it's hard to believe that there have only been 3 leaders at that level in computing in the area. So there's a lot to do. And so that's why it's really good in this year when the non-computing Nobels, the real Nobels, had so many women winners, the literature winner, the 2 chemistry winners, and one of the physics winners being female. It is good that the Pearcey Foundation has used COVID to experiment with new ways of doing things and has had this wonderful Ada Lovelace Day special and held things like celebrating women's contribution to Australia's digital age earlier with Kerry Mengerson, Jenny Seabury that I talked about, Helen Burris, Alison Harcourt, all talking earlier, and supported by Tech Girls Movement Foundation, one of the great STEM organisations in Australia. And then, of course, we're going to hear from 4 of the women who were either the winners or the Hall of Fame winners in New South Wales Entrepreneur of the Year in the past. And they're all women, the ones we're going to hear about tonight. And then it's exciting to note, and listening to Anthony earlier, that 3 of the 4 fantastic finalists, and all 4 groups are fantastic and inspiring, as you see if you're watching the chat running here, that there's 3 of them are women. And so congratulations to all 4, and a particular note that we hope that we'll see numbers like this in terms of the gender balance or the gender imbalance in the future. And talking of which, I have an important announcement to make, and that is the winner of this year's New South Wales Pearcey Entrepreneur Award. As you will have noted in looking at the literature, the recipient of this award is, or the choosing of the recipient is guided by 3 principles. Has the individual taken a risk? Is this individual making a difference? And is this individual an inspiration for others? Now, it's true that all 4 of our finalists definitely meet those criteria, but there can only be one winner. And it's particularly thrilling to say that tonight, the 2020 New South Wales Pearcey Entrepreneur of the Year is Jamila Gordon, founder and CEO of Lumachain. Jamila, on behalf of the Pearcey Foundation, your peers, the prior recipients, the community generally, we all wish you heartfelt congratulations, and we'd like to invite you to say a few words.
Mary O'Kane, thank you. This is absolute an honor, my goodness. Thank you so much for the Pearcey Foundation for the amazing award. And I have to say, I've never dreamed of winning an award like this. Growing up, I didn't even think of going to school or having education, live a long career. I'm honored. Receiving this award with an amazing previous winners to be the same level with them. I'm honored. I'm going to use this award to help entrepreneurship in New South Wales and do everything I can in my power to help bring more girls in technology. Mary, it's amazing to hear that you were doing computer vision, amazing, long time ago. We need more girls in there and more women. I also want to talk about a little bit about Lumachain and make sure that I use this platform to get Lumachain into the world view. It started in New South Wales. This is my home. We're using computer vision to create transparency for consumers and to reward producers who operate ethically and sustainably. We also want to help using computer vision the disadvantaged people who work in the food industry to help them identify unhealthy behaviors and use AI to do their own preferred language to deliver the message, to deliver the training. So thank you. I'm honored to be here and to be part of New South Wales.
Thank you, Jamila. Yeah, you're truly an inspiring winner. Also like to mention that one thing that makes this award unique is the judging panel doesn't actually decide the winner. It's voted on by, in this case, the past 21 years worth of winners and Hall of Famers. This is truly a peer recognition, and congratulations again. We're also thrilled to have yourself and all the finalists who are now part of our Hall of Fame, and you get to decide on next year's winners. Thank you so much also to Professor O'Kane for your inspiring and thoughtful words earlier and highlighting all the areas that Australia has led and continues to lead in ICT, proving that we don't just dig things out of the ground in this country. It's now my great pleasure to introduce 2012 New South Wales Pearcey Award winner and CEO of Job Capital and Rare Birds, Jo Burston, to lead us into what's sure to be a fascinating panel discussion with some of our past New South Wales winners and Hall of Famers. Jo has been recognised as one of Australia's top entrepreneurs for the past 6 years and is a leading authority on global women's entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship as a whole, and SMB markets. Among many other strings to her bow, Jo is an active mentor for fast growth entrepreneurs, both men and women, and is passionate about encouraging young Australians to endeavour to find out exactly who it is that they want to become and create their own jobs to achieve this. Jo, we're in your very capable hands.
Thank you, Simon. And Jamila, I have a glass of champagne here with me, so I wanted to cheers you and just to say that of all the finalists, you're all winners and a very deserving win for you. And I can't wait to watch your journey moving forward. I'll be looking with great interest. Tonight, we're going to hear from some incredible Pearcey Award Hall of Fame and winners. And over the years since I won my own award in 2012, the Pearcey Foundation has been really striving to attract and celebrate more Australian women. To give you context about how Australian women are actually and entrepreneurs are faring globally, I've got a few statistics to give you context. And according to research by the Australian Bureau of Statistics, women now account for over a third or 34% of all business operators in Australia. This is an increase of 46% over the last 20 years. The increase in the number of men setting up their own businesses over the same period of time was 27%. This places Australia 8th globally over the same period of time. And however, we rank lower than the best conditions for women to start businesses at 13, the top 3 being US, New Zealand and Canada. I'm sure maybe with COVID, that's going to shift in the next few years. Interesting enough, MasterCard Index Women of Entrepreneurs that covers 58 global markets. Australia ranks 39 when it comes to knowledge assets and financial access. This measures women business owners' access to education and particularly finance. Now, these findings were echoed in the study undertaken by the federal government in Australia when planning the Boosting Female Founders Initiative. And they found that 38% of respondents reported funding, investment, money, or capital as a barrier, which were 2 areas in general for women to start their own organisations. The financial barriers were categorised broadly into 2 areas: the founder's personal financial situation and attracting investors to financially back the startup. So the investors out there, the data's in, we know that women are a good investment, and women-led companies or companies who have women leading or on boards are more profitable. According to the government's report, 32% of respondents raised the difficulty of finding information resources to support their venture, and that's specifically for early stage startups. This included basic material, information, application guidance, and financial advice, as well as connections to networks, finding mentors, and support groups, just like the Pearcey Foundation. Now, for the past 5 years, I've had the privilege of working really hard to reduce these barriers for women through my organisation, Inspiring Rare Birds, and we're creating a connected community of support, running business building masterclasses, networking events, and through our very successful mentoring program adopted by the PMC and the Office of Women now for 2 years, we not only support women entrepreneurs, but also are used by companies such as PwC, American Express and 7 West Media to reward and retain emerging female talent to drive diversity and inclusion in their outcomes. Now, the women they're going to talk to tonight are people I know very well and are absolutely moving the needle and creating financial and community impact. So the first lady I've known for quite a few years, Emma LaRosso. Emma was a Hall of Fame New South Wales Pearcey Foundation recipient in 2016. And Emma is the CEO of DigiVisor, Australia's leading digital marketing technology and activations company, which she co-founded in 2010. and Digivisor helps businesses understand, optimise and make better decisions, earned and paid social. Emma is the CEO and founder of GoTo.game, a leading data-driven agency and destination for all things gaming and esports, which was founded in 2017. And it's very usual for lots of these amazing women entrepreneurs to have more than one business or interest. Across both companies, Emma employs over 50 people in Australia, another 13 across Asia, serving some of the largest global brands and offering a SaaS solution for smaller businesses to take advantage of affordable digital marketing insights. Emma won the 2014 Carnegie Den investment round, which led to further funding, and is a portfolio CEO for Heads Over Heels. She's a recipient of the AGSM Anita Prabhu Women Leader in Business Award for Entrepreneurship, Innovation, Leadership and Business in Acumen. She was awarded the Pearcey Foundation Tech Award in 2016. Emma holds an MBA in the Australian Graduate School of Management at the University of New South Wales and completed further education in leadership and negotiation with Harvard University. Welcome, Emma, and we're going to give you the next 5 minutes of our life for you to share with us a few insights about what has happened in your journey since receiving the Pearcey Award, what influence that might have had, any aha moments or perhaps challenges you've faced. And of course, we want to celebrate you as we always do. So give us some of your career highlights and some amazing wins that you've had.
Thank you, Jo. And, you know, I must cut down whoever gave you that introduction. That's embarrassing to hear it that long and wasting that much time. So let me get into it. Look, I think the first thing to say, it was an honour. I didn't even know that I had been put forward to even be considered as a finalist. And I've got to tell you, for all entrepreneurs, but I think particularly women entrepreneurs and those that started in before this ecosystem that is so supportive today around startups and accelerators and even early growth support, the corporate ventures. There's so much more today than what it was, say, when founded in 2010. So to be recognised was amazing because it was actually a vote of confidence. You're pretty bloody minded and determined as an entrepreneur anyhow. You don't need other people to tell you there is or isn't an opportunity. You're the one that goes after that and, you know, sells a vision and brings people on a journey, including investors, to believe in you. So all that hard work was kind of underway, and it was probably the first time that I kind of put my head back up and went, oh, okay, yes, actually, I am employing more people now, and this is wonderful as a recognition of their work, because an entrepreneur isn't you coming up with a great idea. It's the fact that you can excite, engage, motivate, and unlock passion, potential, talent, smarts of a bunch of people to deliver something great. And it definitely helped. I think it was a celebration for the company, and it was a celebration to say, let's keep going, because there is a leadership opportunity for New South Wales business. You know, I'm passionate about Australian businesses, of course, having led Australian technology companies previously. You know, I just believe there's so much more that we can be doing. So the fact that this is recognising those that take the risk, I love that that's the number one factor here that is part of the determination. It is, you do take a risk, and it was just great. Yeah, it's great that this is here, and I love today's theme. Very big fan, obviously, of Ada Lovelace, and you know, one of the early naming of our business of our conference rooms was based on a strong female technology lead. So I love that this is the theme of today. So look, I think for anyone who is listening, it's still inspiring to me to be on a panel of such greatness. I mean, I love Jo. I've been inspired by her for many years, but every panelist, you know, the finalists, that some I've actually had the opportunity to work closely with, it's our job to continue to do our best to grow great companies, to keep it innovating, to get it into the hands of as many people as we can, to solve the problems and think well beyond our shores. COVID's accelerated a lot of the way people are thinking about who they're engaging, who they can serve, how they work, And I just think this is her, you know, the start of that next wave of innovation. Kind of no excuses. People are saying they're working more effectively than they did before. Organisations, corporates are certainly innovating faster than they have. Our government has innovated faster than they had previously. So I think it's an exciting time for all. So thank you for including me. I can't encourage entrepreneurs enough to just try, get out there. It is a test and learn environment, but if your vision is high enough and you're prepared to put in the grit and determination and the tenacity, and you can keep communicating why it's so important and that vision of inspiring others, then you can keep pivoting till you get the path to success. And I think that's at its heart what makes us get up every day and go for another supercharge to win. Thank you, Jo.
Thank you, Emma. You're such an inspiration to me, and I'm really happy to say I'm one of Emma's clients online, and she's done some amazing work with inspiring rare birds in particular. So thank you for always supporting women-led businesses and giving everything you have to, you know, the bigger vision of how we're trying to do it. So I'm always going to be watching your journey, Emma, and be fascinated in where it goes in the next few years. I'd like to next introduce Dr. Sylvia Pfeiffer, and Sylvia is the CEO of CoView, a cloud application focused on enabling healthcare providers to set up video consultation services for patients and to collaborate on patient cases with peers. Sylvia has more than 15 years of experience with web video technology. So, you know, we got into it in COVID. She's been doing it forever. Has been previously working for Google, Mozilla, NICTA and the CSIRO, and has been involved in creating the web standards that underpin the CoView technology. Sylvia has a double degree in computer science and business management, but has most recently worked with several speech pathology groups and learned a lot about the special requirements for successful speech pathology video sessions. And Sylvia was the 2005 and 2018 Hall of Famer for the New South Wales Pearcey Awards. Welcome, Sylvia, and let's talk about what's happened since, you know, perhaps 2005, and then what has emerged since 2015, and share with us your journey and inspiration that's given you that journey.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the panel today. And yes, I've been a long-term part of the Pearcey group. Now, unfortunately, I've never had the advantage of meeting Pearcey, so I was very jealous of Mary before, and it's an interesting. He seems to have been a really interesting personality. And really brought the technology era in Australia forward a huge leap. Now, I only came to Australia in 1999, and I had just done my PhD in computer science. I had worked at the CSIRO for that first time, was invited as a postdoc, and then decided to continue to stay on because I thought the CSIRO's goal in making research something that the industry and that will be useful to everyday people is a really audacious goal and really worth it. It seemed to me that was where I wanted to be, in developing technology that was going to get used by real life people. In 2005, when I left the CSIRO, I was actually working on a new technology around web video. So we brought the video technology to the web and made it searchable long before it actually became part of everyday usage. So what we see today, I kind of feel proud that that's where everything has led. I did work at the CSIRO, at Google and YouTube for a while after leaving the CSIRO, which has also encouraged me to bring more technology into people's hands. I don't know if I mentioned this, but the 2005 award that I received was for what we called the continuous media web back in the day. If you've ever watched some movies online where they have videos with a link through to another video and a link to another video, that's kind of what we talked about back in the day. It's become quite normal on the web now, and people can put web pages full of videos and online on the web and on mobile phones. Back in the day when we worked on video, I was told video on a mobile phone is a fad. It's the only people that will ever use it is the Japanese. It will go away. So that's so much for predictions of the future. So COVID, in fact, has shown us the exact opposite. We now all live in Zoom calls, in video calls. I'm really proud to have been a little bit involved in that whole development through my involvement in the standards body, the W3C, which is developing the World Wide Web. Now, leaving the CSIRO in 2006, which was my first time leaving the CSIRO, was actually creating a startup around video search. And Emma was quite right, you know, back in the days, that was around the time where we had a total drought in investment money. There was no ecosystem in investment. There was no startup ecosystem in Australia. There were barely 2 or 3 VCs that would invest in startups. I was told when I was looking for investment for my idea, but you're writing software. What do you need? What do you need funding for? Why would you need money to build software? You just sit in your garage and type. That's what everyone in America does. You don't need funding for that. So it was a really initial and vastly misunderstood time for software. This is completely different now. I must say my second startup, which funnily enough, I did again. I went back to the CSIRO in 2012, and then we created what we call a CoView, which stands for Collaborative Viewing, which is a bit like what we are in here now, right now, Zoom, but it's for doctors. It's really for making doctors connected with patients. And little did I know that it took a pandemic to make our company a success, but COVID absolutely made that happen. We were doing like 300 consultations a day before the COVID crisis, and I thought that was pretty amazing. And then within 2 or 3 weeks, we had to do 25,000 consultations a day. So that was a crazy increase and a huge success. So the pandemic absolutely blew us onto the world stage and made us very successful. And I'm also really proud to be able to offer jobs to people that were very happy to help us out during the time of the COVID crisis, and now really excited to be part of a young and dynamic and growing team. So we're really happy to be doing amazing things in the transformation of healthcare in Australia. Now my final words, if you allow me 1 more minute, will be about encouraging other female entrepreneurs, research scientists, and leaders in general to not be afraid to step up. This is really what I want to say about today, and it's Ada Lovelace Day. It is very fitting to encourage female leaders today. I wouldn't have thought about myself as a leader. I was very afraid to create a startup as a research scientist, particularly at CSIRO. You're a little bit protected. You're like in a safe area, and you can just do your work, do your publications, and develop some new technology. But it wasn't enough challenge for me. I actually wanted that technology to succeed in people's hands, and so creating a startup was a daring step, but a very worthwhile step. It grows you as a person, it grows you as a leader, and it really helps make a difference in the industry. So I would like to encourage female entrepreneurs, young women, to not be afraid of their own courage and to just take the step. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. It's such great proof that you don't know where the pathway is going to lead you. And when you said you're a little bit involved with the implementation of what we're doing today during COVID and having online conversations, I think you are very much a part of that. So a very humble thing to say. I also love the fact that, you know, even in adversity, you're at the right time at the right place and your business is really booming. And I'm just so thrilled for you. So congratulations for your continued success and also your continued ability to be an amazing role model for other women who are perhaps coming out of a research background as well.
Yes, thank you.
I'd like to next introduce Dr. Katrina Wallace. Katrina is the founder and CEO, Ethical AI Advisory, Director of Flamingo AI, the non-executive director of Vibe AI, NED Responsible Technology Australia, NED CRC Smarter Regions. I'm going to just give a little bit of your bio for the purpose of time, Katrina, but all of these ladies' incredible bios can be found on the Pearcey New South Wales website for further investigation. Dr. Katrina Wallace has been recognised by the Australian Financial Review as the most influential woman in business and entrepreneurship. Based between the US and Australia, Katrina is the founder and CEO of Ethical AI Advisory. Katrina is also the director and founder of artificial intelligence ASX-listed company Flamingo AI, provider of machine learning-based technologies. Flamingo AI is the second only woman-led business with a CEO and chair to ever list on the Australian Stock Exchange. So Katrina, welcome to the panel. I've followed your journey for many, many years, as you know, and I'm such a girl fan of yours. I'd love for you to share with the audience what you've been doing since you were, let me just check here, it was in 2015 Hall of Fame. What's been going on in your world from an AI perspective and what's important to you about women in entrepreneurship as well?
Great, thanks Jo, and hello everyone. I've just been having a great time here listening to the amazing Mary O'Kane. I am like totally in love with Mary now. She's just an awesome woman leader for us, extraordinary. Jamila, I already know. Jamila, you're even more impressive than we've acknowledged today because I know your true backstory, which is just extraordinary. So I encourage everyone to read a bit more about Jamila. She truly is one of a kind. And to all the finalists, it was a very difficult voting process. You're all just extraordinary. And I also too would like to quickly acknowledge the Indigenous traditional custodians of the land here where I am in Sydney, the Gadigal people, and to note that we've done 80,000 years of innovating in this country, so we should be pretty bloody good at this stuff, right? So Jo shared a bit of my story. Essentially, I am a person that loves robots, pretty convinced that they will take over one day. So I did a PhD at the Australian Graduate School of Management, and my area of expertise is the role technology will play in replacing human leaders. So I've been on this human plus machine path for probably 20 years. And that's led me to build a number of companies. One, which Jo mentioned, is Flamingo AI. So I founded that company 2014, set it up in Australia. Same experiences as Emma and other people on the call have had today, where there was just absolutely no venture capital in Australia. So I went to the US within 6 months and set the business up in New York, and we ended up having a office in New York and in Hartford, and ran the business from America. But I am a mother of 5 kids, and so it was really tricky to actually be running the business, and I couldn't actually move to America. So what I did was spent 2 weeks in Australia, 2 weeks in America, 2 weeks in Australia, 2 weeks in America for about 4 years. And on every third trip, I'd take my 2 youngest children with me. So built the business, and then in 2016, we were approached by some investors here who invited us to list on the Australian Stock Exchange. Now, that was an interesting thing. It was at a small window where there was money moving out of mining and into tech, and we were one of the very first startups to list on the Australian Stock Exchange. We were, I think, the first AI company and also the second only woman-led business to to list on the Australian Stock Exchange. So that's been a trip. It's been, as I say, a journey to the gates of entrepreneurial hell and back many times. And that is a story for another day, and that I'm very happy to share. But we have been on the ASX and are still running the business in America. And what we did is we built our own machine learning technology. So we have something called semi-supervised machine learning, which is a patented technology now, unique to us, which is also, I think, a great achievement for Australia. I have recently decided that we would privatise the Flamingo business because it is so challenging running a young tech company on the ASX. So we have just gone through a process where we have sold the Flamingo business, which is great, excellent news. And that sale is just going through at the moment. And it means that I can take what I've learned in the last 5 years, and something that came to me that was very important was the fact that we need to be building this technology responsibly and ethically. And I didn't really see too much evidence of that happening in either Australia or in the US or any of the big tech companies I was working with. So earlier this year, I founded another company called Ethical AI Advisory, and it is a firm dedicated to working with not only software companies, but large corporates to help them start thinking about how they build ethical frameworks and responsible technology strategies. I think that's going to be super important going forward. And so what the Pearcey Award has done, or recognition has done for me over the last 5 years, is really help me provide a platform in order to talk about the things that are purposeful and important to me, and that is diversity and inclusion and ethical technology. And as a woman in tech, in my field in AI, the fastest growing tech sector in the world, it is only 1 in 10 women that take these jobs. So 9 in 10 jobs are for males. And we also know that AI will displace millions of jobs. 90% of the jobs that will be displaced will be the jobs of women and minority groups. So for me as a tech entrepreneur, that's not okay. And I really believe that I must play a role in starting to educate the market and all entrepreneurs on the fact that we need to build diverse organisations, and we need to get this ethics right for many, many reasons, mainly so we don't code the historical biases that we have already in human society into the machines that will run our world. So Pearcey has been absolutely fabulous in helping me just have another platform where I can talk about the fact that we entrepreneurs, yeah, we do need to be super commercial, but we also have a responsibility, given that government is way behind. We can't necessarily rely on the big tech giants to do all this in the right way. We need to be the entrepreneurs who lead the ethical and responsible use of technology. Thanks, Jo.
I think
we've got you. Can you hear?
Thank you, Katrina. I hope everybody can hear me. I might have had a, yes, I think you might have lost me for a second there. I'm back. I hope you can hear me. Katrina, it's so wonderful to see that entrepreneurs like yourself are not just focused on the commercial outcome of business, but also the ethical stability of business. And as you said very clearly, it's always government. We're not relying on government to solve these problems, and very large businesses can perhaps not do it on their own either. So having that niche that you're moving into, I think, is extraordinarily important and quite groundbreaking, particularly in Australia. I'm very much going to be watching that space and space I'm particularly personally interested in as well. Good luck for the sale of Flamingo AI. You and your family won't miss those 2 week about trips to that part of your life. But congratulations and well done to you for what you have already achieved and what I know you will achieve in the future, coming into the prime of what I think you're at. Our last speaker is Jennifer Zanuck, and Jennifer is the Vice President of EMEA Play Network. Jennifer has recently made the move to Sydney from the UK, where she has taken up the role of VP in MEMIA at Play Networking London, leading the rollout of Apple Music for Business. To give you a short part of her bio, and again, you can find the rest on the Pearcey New South Wales website. Jennifer is a senior corporate executive, a startup CEO, a high impact leader with contagious passion and drive, an entrepreneur in her own right. And Jennifer has spent a decade in Silicon Valley starting and founding companies. Among her many successes, Jennifer founded Paloma Mobile, a venture-backed mobile startup, creating cloud-based services for mobile operators, and raised $10 million in venture capital for Seesaw Networks, a digital media services company that she founded. For her achievements as a female entrepreneur, Jennifer has received a Trailblazers Award. A passionate supporter of the Australian startup and venture capital community, Jennifer headed up global partnerships and ecosystems in the Department of Entrepreneurship at the University of New South Wales, where she designed and led programs like the Founders 10 Times Accelerator, which identifies high potential startups within the university environment. Jennifer, it's so wonderful to have you. I have not had the pleasure of meeting you personally. So let's look at, what your journey has been like. And I can see from the notes here, you were our Pearcey New South Wales winner in 2013. What's been happening since then? And what would you like to share with us, just not about your own journey, but about women entrepreneurs in general?
Okay, well, hi everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Let's just talk a little bit about Pearcey. So I have been an entrepreneur since, let's time check, 1998. And most of my time, Sylvia's laughing there, I know we've been around for a long time. And most of my journey, I founded more than 6 companies, exited couple, was done while I was living in the US. So I flew largely under the radar as far as Australian entrepreneurs were considered, even though I think Wedgetail, which was one of my first exits, I think was Avcal's Deal of the Year in Australia at the time, and that was on enterprise security. And so I had just come back to Australia. I had sold my last company, Zoomy, which was one of the very first mobile messaging on smartphones, smartphone being an N95 Nokia at the time. And I was back in Australia and trying to raise money for Paloma Mobile. It was just getting going. And I was unknown. And what really happened for me is the impact of the Pearcey Award is that being acknowledged, aside from being incredibly proud, it put me on the radar in Australia again. Because when I left in '98, there was no entrepreneurial community, and that was the key reason I left. We had Allen and Buckridge as our investors. We'd had the Look Smart listing. Macquarie were doing a little bit of investing at the time, but you needed 7 years of revenues and most of those in profitability before they'd actually invest in you. So I ended up moving to Silicon Valley, to the belly of the beast, and really fast tracking the education that I had around being an entrepreneur. So I was forever grateful for Pearcey, because what that meant was not only did I have VCs approaching me who otherwise didn't know me, but also potential employees, so people that actually wanted to work with me on the crazy missions that I was on. I think one of the lessons that I learned by starting entrepreneurship so early is when I got to San Francisco. So many people thought that I was mad for giving up my corporate role at Microsoft. When I got there, I immediately found a purpose-built city for the entrepreneurial mindset. Everything was set up to support you. And very quickly, I fell into the arms of a group called Forum for Women Entrepreneurs, and I'll be forever grateful for that organization. And really what they were attempting to do was to level the playing field and to help women-led companies survive in what was, in 1998, a very male-dominated world. And I got the Trailblazer Award because in those years, only 2.2% of the venture funding that was in that first year, it was 80 billion, and now I think it's several hundreds of billion were ever given to female-backed companies or female CEOs. And so I was fortunate enough to get that award several times because I raised, you know, more than 50 million for several different countries. But it really brought to the fore the fact that, you know, there was a group of women determined to create this level playing field and acknowledge all the other female entrepreneurs. And so every year we would search through Silicon Valley or globally and try and find other females that we could acknowledge. And one of the most illuminating ones was, I don't know if you ever remember a company called Siebel Systems. It was, you know, very early in the day. It was a massive CRM company. And we honored a woman called Jan House, who was actually the co-founder. Yet the CEO, Tom, was the guy that was always on TV. And she was operating very much in the background. And it was actually in her speech where he got up and acknowledged her. We invited him to do the introduction for this award that we'd given her. And he acknowledged publicly in this room that had it not been for her, the support that she gave him, the fact that she ran the whole engine room of the organization and enabled him to go out to be on CNBC and MSNBC, that the company would never have achieved what it achieved. And for me, it sort of really illuminated the fact that very often as females and entrepreneurs, we operate in the background, that we aren't in the foreground. And this actually happened in one of my companies. I was setting up one of the very first programmatic ad networks, and I happened into a company called Vantage Point, which at the time was the largest VC with 4 billion under management in Silicon Valley. And they said to me, love your idea, we think it's sensational, but you need to go get yourself a male CEO. You need to step aside. And foolishly I did, because I thought it doesn't matter, I can still, you know, pull the strings from the sidelines. And it was a very hard lesson that I learned, because the company obviously went in a direction, and if you're not the CEO and not in control, you're not in control. And so I think one of the key things I learned from that lesson is I then set about getting myself a mentor, somebody who was a very well regarded male in Silicon Valley, and set about asking, you know, I became a sponge to learn how is it I need to act, what is it I need to do without losing the very essence of myself. You know, so I would encourage everybody starting out on their entrepreneurial journey, you know, look around for somebody that you admire, you like the way they work, they have the values that are shared and common values with you, and get some advice. You can have more than one mentor, you can have many of them. And I'd also encourage you, however early you are in your entrepreneurial journey, you can be a mentor or offer assistance to people as well. When I started the 10X accelerator at the University of New South Wales, as soon as one cohort came through, we encouraged them to turn around to the next cohort coming through and offer assistance. So whether it was go and have a coffee, have a 30-minute meeting, you know, hand out tickets at an event, you know, to give back in some way. And a couple of the entrepreneurs, I remember them saying to me, well, you know, I've just finished the accelerator, like, what have I got to give? And it's like, well, you've got 10 weeks more knowledge than the people who are coming in behind you. So, you know, and they were surprised at just how much they had learnt so quickly in their journey. So don't ever feel that you don't know enough, you're too young, you're too early. There's always some knowledge, a contact or some information. And that's what we as females also need to do a lot better. We don't learn this as well as a lot of men, which is networks, and we have to be very open and sharing with our knowledge and with our network. So I guess in conclusion, I would say I would encourage everybody, please, you know, share your knowledge, it always helps somebody around you. It lifts other people up. And it's all boats rise with the tide. So thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited, and congratulations to the nominees and the winners.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's wonderful to hear the stories of pioneering entrepreneurs, and particularly women entrepreneurs who tackled Silicon Valley all those years ago, and how well set up it was for you as well to thrive, which Australia just couldn't do at the time. Hopefully, I think we can do that a little bit better now. But the one thing that stood out for me during the discussion was the mountain of knowledge that people sit on without actually realizing it, and how that tacit knowledge can be shared between entrepreneurs and between, you know, mentee and a mentor, and how valuable that is. And it's often knowledge that is only gained through experiences, and nothing you can learn in a book. So I really, really appreciate that perspective. And also, I just wanted to say and acknowledge, it's very, very early in the morning in the UK right now, isn't it?
That's right. It's not bad. It's come on at 8 o'clock.
So I think I've got the way around for yeah. So I really appreciate you, because I'm looking at your Zoom. It looks like the middle of the day, but I know it was very early and it's coming into winter. So thank you so much for being able to join us. You're such a legend, such a trailblazer. And I hope there's a book in you, because I'd be willing to read it. I'd love to see more of your story, and published as a role model that you are.
Thank you.
Now we're going to open the floor for a couple of questions. We're running a little bit over time, but that doesn't matter. We've had a great session with these amazing 4 women. If anyone would like to ask a question, please pop it into the Q&A. I'm going to have a look at that right now. And we have one great question here. Perhaps it's probably directed at all the women, because it's a perspective thing, but what makes a good mentor, and what should you be looking for? What should someone look for their first mentor by mindful of? What should they be mindful of? And jump in, please, ladies, jump in if you'd love to answer the question.
I'll jump in. Mentors come in many forms, right? So there can be like a formal mentor as part of a program like we used to run at UNSW, where I actually ran the mentor program and set it up there, where we would train people. But a mentor could also be anybody that you just go and have a coffee with and say, I saw that you raised money, or how do I approach, I need to go and get a corporate customer, or how do I even set up my marketing? I don't know how to get marketing digital or whatever. And I think the key thing, that a mentor is only somebody that should guide and ask you the questions almost in a way of self-discovery, and give you some tips and techniques. But I think the key thing is make sure that you are values aligned, that the mentor has the same set of values that you do, because if there's anything that they say that makes you feel uncomfortable about an approach or whatever, just graciously go, oh, you don't need to have a second cup of coffee with that person. But a great mentor is somebody who's got a wealth of experience and is prepared to share it and give you the time.
Absolutely. And I really love the fact that you said, Jennifer, they ask questions, because mentors do just guide the journey. They don't give you the answers. They just help you get the answer. Now, I've taken 20 minutes of time that I didn't have from everybody, but I think the panel has been so extraordinary. We've had such an amazing focus on some incredible women. I do hope in the future that people like Emma, Sylvia, Katrina and Jennifer are welcomed to the Pearcey Awards as nominations of the future. If you know those women, please bring them into the organisation to be celebrated and to become part of the lineup of finalists this year. Jamila, congratulations again. What an outstanding business. We've got, a couple of generations of women who have completely got your back. So, and of course, all the guys as well. This is not a women's fest. It's about men and women supporting all entrepreneurs. So thank you, ladies. It's been brilliant. I'm so inspired, and I will definitely be charging a glass of champagne to all of you tonight.
Thank you, Jo, and also to our panelists, Emma, Sylvia, Katrina, and Jennifer, for such an engaging and inspiring session. And you know, I took away a couple of things from that, but one of them is all of you have had multiple companies. You're really showing that entrepreneurial mindset and being able to do that. And it's an example for the next generation. I threw this in a question and I'll mention it as an aside now. My youngest, she's 12 years old. She's just started her first business. And so it's great that there are examples out there. And she's had a go at me and said, I have to mention it. It's cutecases.com.au. It's great to see the next generation coming through and that there are so many examples for her. So thank you to everyone who's been involved in this afternoon's New South Wales Pearcey Awards, our 2020 Entrepreneur of the Year finalists, Professor Mary O'Kane, Wayne Fitzsimmons and Anthony Woodward, Martin Orgel, who assists us each year with our PR, along with the rest of the New South Wales Committee, and finally to the fabulous team at Slattery's that have made this happen, and special thanks to Carolyn Todd. I also want to again congratulate Jamila Gordon, our 2020 New South Wales Tech Entrepreneur of the Year. It's very well deserved. I wish you all the best for the National Awards, which are going to be held online on Wednesday, 25th of November. And that will also be the final Pearcey conversation for the year. Definitely one to include in your calendars. And thus ends the official proceedings for this evening. My sincere thanks for your attendance and support of the Pearcey Foundation. As we close out the evening, we will play Dr. Carl von Moller's fabulous presentation on Australian innovation. This 7-minute video was especially put together for the Pearcey Foundation. If you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth watching. Please enjoy the rest of your evening, and I hope to see you again soon.
I think Australia has a terrific record for being inventive.
There's clearly a brilliant, innovative streak in Australians.
We've had an honourable role to play.
It may be due to the circumstances, their isolation, the need to be creative.
We had some early innovations. In 1854, we had our first telegraph line between Melbourne and Williamstown, the port.
A lot of the first forays into electronics in Australia were about telecommunication.
Outside of America and England, was the first country in the world to use Morse code.
Morse code revolutionised communication, and it wasn't long before those telegraph lines spread like spiders' webs all around Australia.
That was the Victorian internet.
The Darwin to Java undersea cable was put in place in 1871, and it was to connect to the overland telegraph line. We then had cable contact back to Europe.
The businesses that used the Morse code the most was in fact the wool industry.
And we had an extraordinary inventor called Henry Sutton.
Henry Sutton had designed the first of the rechargeable batteries.
He was very much a self-taught genius of his age.
The compound telephone, which we know today, which has one piece, came as a result of earpiece at one end, microphone at the other, all off the same magnet. That was a brilliant invention.
Alexander Graham Bell comes to visit him in Ballarat.
Bell had that telephone in two pieces, and Henry Sutton made it in one.
When you've got companies doing high-tech things.
Radio was explosive in its growth through the 20s.
It was vital that Australia have communications, particularly communications with the ships at sea.
The whole electronics industry in that period, from 1920s onwards, was dominated by the firm AWA and by its chief scientist, Sir Ernest Fisk.
So he thought he could communicate with the afterlife, with the dead, with radio. They're starting production of vacuum tubes. They're realising radio's huge.
This is called a Traeger pedal. It became familiar to people on stations to use the pedal radio to communicate with the doctor, to communicate with each other.
Radio in Australia is probably seen as a little bit more vital because it's a big continent.
In Australia during that wartime period, one of the most important developments that took place was at CSIR Radio Physics, where they developed the distance measuring equipment.
In World War II, Australia had developed portable radar systems for our soldiers to take into the field in jungle warfare, and that was fairly extraordinary in its day.
During 1946, I began to develop ideas for an electronic system for computation. Towards the end of 1947, I had more or less completed a theoretical logical design for what was to become CIRAC.
CIRAC came about because it was part of a general development across the world because there was a need for high-speed computation. CIRAC was the brainchild of Trevor Pearcey and Maston Beard.
The machine was well conceived and well engineered by the team at Radio Physics.
CIRAC has the greatest Australian content of any computer ever made.
There were only 3 other computers in the world.
It was a huge advance over the calculating machines, which was all they had.
CIRAC was the first computer to generate music.
Colonel Bogey's March was the first thing, which was a very popular tune of its day. You know, da, 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 da.
And that was the first use of a computer to generate music in the world. CIRAC, in later years, when it was in Melbourne, was the first computer to generate a 24-hour weather forecast.
It was an extraordinary machine. It did extraordinary work. It found the centre of our galaxy.
They developed games that people could play using the cathode ray screens and the flashing lights.
It was a remarkable machine created and maintained by remarkable people.
One of the more significant Australian inventions in electronics was the black box float recorder.
And of course the atomic absorption spectrometer, which was a CSIRO development.
Australia's always been in the forefront of television research.
Australia kept pace. Australia kept pace with the rest of the world in this technology.
The reason why biomedical is because we've got this huge centre of biomedical research here, which needs hardware and needs instruments and things like that.
They were experimenting.
There was the bionic ear.
I have spent the greater part of my working life focused on developing what turned out to be a bionic ear or cochlear implant for profoundly deaf people.
And the pacemaker.
In fact, in 1971, Telectronics was the first company in the world to put a hermetically sealed pacemaker on the market.
So there's certainly people doing some very clever stuff in that area.
In the very late 60s, early 70s, Dick Smith came along and started up Dick Smith Electronics.
I'm going to sell electronics and I'm going to do it in a revolutionary way.
And then straight after that, we got the very first digital chips, CD 4011, 4001, and this was the beginning of the digital era.
Late 70s, mid 80s was sort of like the golden age of hobby electronics, I think.
It was magazines, it was buying kits, there was a computer club. First project that I built myself with some friends was the National Semiconductor kit called the SCAP.
These were times when it was really quite a mensa test to get the smallest computer to do the smallest thing.
There was an enthusiasm, almost a religious zealot of interest in these parts.
I think it was. I think that it was very exciting for people to be able to build something which used a chip. It was a concept which was new.
The first commercial computers were starting to come in, the Dick Smith Sorcerer, for example, then the Australian Microbee.
Unix became the thing.
Australia also built the Fairlight, which is the world's first digital sampler, and Fairlight expanded. It became a very innovative audio editing tool for post-production. Post-production being the synchronisation of sound to image. Basically, the Fairlight system is still incorporated inside the Blackmagic system these days. And Rode microphones now, one of the world's most successful microphone manufacturers, is in Sydney.
I'm particularly proud of what I did there. The NT3, which is a little pencil microphone.
The CSIRO is government controlled and they've had some big intellectual property wins recently with the Wi-Fi patent which they won, which is absolutely incredible.
There's been a long process of innovation and discovery.